On June 23rd, there's a special event at the Ordway Theater. It's the culmination of the year-long Minnesota Remembers Vietnam initiative. I'm going to be on stage, joined on the 23rd by Kevin Kling and J.D. Steele for an evening of storytelling and music focusing on the Minnesota experience in Vietnam. The event is called Epilogue. One of those telling stories from the stage at the Ordway next week is Linda McBrayer. Her soldier father died in Vietnam at the age of 19 when Linda was just a baby. You and I have talked before on Minnesota Public Radio, so it's so nice to be
good to be back.
Almanac.
Thank you.
Your story is amazing. Your father's story is amazing.
My father's story is amazing.
And so you were born just a few months after his death.
I was born actually in May of '67, and he was KIA in September of '67.
Okay, so just there wasn't much time though.
No.
But he knew of your birth and was...
He did. He had a photo of me. It was, yeah.
So you have some photographs of your father.
Yes.
What did you know of your dad growing up?
I knew limited things. It was a very difficult situation. I think I have moved on from and forgiven my mother because she was 20 years old. And the life that she had envisioned with her and this man that she loved was over. And so she met a man. I have a stepfather. It was just different. He wasn't talked about. But luckily, my grandmother saved 4 obituaries and his Navy Cross award that he received.
And he received the Navy Cross for valor.
Yes.
In the middle, it was a firefight of
It
some
was
sort?
a firefight that actually, my father was a radio operator, but he was with a group where they also carried rifles. So, of course, every man an infantryman. And when they came under fire, the person on top of the Amtrak, which he served, if you watch the Ken Burns special, they talked about the trackers. He was with a track unit up on the DMZ. And when the man on top of the track manning the machine gun was hit and went down, my father jumped on top and administered suppressive fire until they could get people in. And the men who survived credit him with their survival.
You came across this precious document, this diary, that must have filled in a lot of your knowledge gaps, huh?
It was the first time I had ever been given my father's voice. Up until that moment, I had met people who had talked to him. I had aunts and uncles who told me about him.
And how long ago was this, Linda?
This diary came back to me in 2012.
Oh, so recently. Wow.
Very recently. And so I had people that were offering me pieces of my father, but they're pieces of their interpretation of who my father was. And for the first time, I had his voice in my head telling me the story of his time in a way that no one else had been able to. And while I thank the men who told me about him because their pain, it made it difficult for them sometimes, this was the first time I heard him.
Did you have a certain amount of anger, or maybe your mom, the fact that your dad, very brave soul, taking control in that situation, but he knew you were in this world?
Yeah. And I think honestly, I struggled with that until a few weeks ago when we went to a showing of the movie that they had here about what it means to go to war. And I realized that when he was there, that was his family. That was who mattered. And that it was a greater purpose. And so while I have to say it's always been difficult, and I've always probably carried some measure of anger because I am only human, and that's a very human emotion, I understand now, I think in a way that I didn't before, is that maybe in that act he was thinking of me and my safety and my future.
How do you think your father's story and your story fit in kind of the broader Vietnam War narrative that we've been going through here in the last year or so?
You know, I've been thinking about that quite a bit as I've been going through and preparing for this upcoming event. And I think my father's voice is the voice of those who didn't come back to tell their story. And I would only say that he speaks for them because he is so eloquent and amazing in his voice that I will let him have that. it's the opportunity for those who didn't come back to tell their side of things.
Are you going to be reading from the diary on stage?
I will. I do have a couple of very dear passages that I'll be sharing with everyone.
How about the countdown calendar that he had?
Oh, this countdown calendar. I mean, for me, so much of this stuff is amazing. This is 50 years old, and it's still,
Great
you know, in really good condition. And that's the credit to the people who had the diary. But yeah, this was a countdown calendar that they marked the days that they were there and when home was coming, when the flight out, you know. So it's...
The fact that you got this diary not more than just a few years ago, and I don't know if the story is too long, but just was it one of his friends who gave it to you?
We have no idea the relationship between the gentleman who brought the somehow, some way, this diary came back and sat on a bookshelf in Independence, Missouri, for 40 years, and it was absolutely no connection between him and my father. They were nowhere near where they served. It is just divine intervention. You know.
I think it was supposed to come back to you.
It was supposed to come back to me, and it came back to me at a time when I could appreciate what I was receiving.
Yeah.
And I think that's something too. 50 years out, we can start appreciating that time and what it meant for us as a country.
And you two will talk more about this at
We will. And so I'm so happy that you're going to be joining
Thank
me on
you.
stage.
Yes.
And of course, tickets are still available for folks who want to come.
Yes.
So it should be really such a poignant
I think it will be a
night.
beautiful evening.
Thanks for coming.
Glad
Thank
that
you.
you're here. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Now remember, the Epilogue program at the Ordway is just one of a series of Vietnam-themed events next week. Starting Thursday of next week, a replica of the Vietnam Memorial Wall will be in place on the State Capitol Mall. And then there's a host of other events that we're calling the Wall That Heals Weekend. You can find out more information by going to tpt.org/events.